There's any universe. No, that's on me. I trying to figure out what school is in there. I love those. I stayed in church. That was so So every time you leave, someone has to go take water.
Good morning, everyone.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
So last week we started, it was the first Sunday of Advent. Sorry, my little my tapers are not big enough for this. And so this week is the second Sunday of Advent. So last week we lit the candle of hope, which starts us off. And so in tradition of Advent, we will relight the candle of hope because we're still carrying that with us. And then this morning we are going to light our second candle of Advent, which is the candle of, does anyone remember? This is like school.
Joy?
Got it. You two are also correct, but this is joy in this one's piece. But yes, today is, I should have cut that. The candle of faith. Woo!
That'd be the candle of fire.
There we go. This little guy is just giving me trouble. Well, he'll be fine. The candle of faith is also called Bethlehem's candle, and it's calling us back to Mary and Joseph's journey to Bethlehem and the faith that required to go being very pregnant and not knowing if you have a place to stay when you get there, and all of the faith that continued to be asked of them as they were there in that process. And so this morning, as Blake talks, as we sing, as things are read, and this week, that's where our postures were being called back to, is what in your life is feeling like it's asking a lot of faith of you. Where are you being called to that you're unsure of how it's going to work out, of where you're going to land, if there's going to be space for you. And so just thinking of those places and offering that up to the Lord and looking back to Mary and Joseph and seeing God come through for them, and let that fill you up knowing that God comes through for you. Okay? So I
am going to read a poem. Blake asked me to read something. And so I had my wife save all of the non-textbook reading she had for one of her classes this semester. And so I looked through it to try to find something that I thought would fit. And so I think this one does. It doesn't fit exactly, but I'll tell you what I think about it at the end. It is by Alice Oswald, and it's called Woods, Etc. And it says, footfall, which is a means so steady and in small sections wanders through the mind, unnoticed because it beats constantly, sweeping together the loose tracks of sound. I remember walking once into increasing woods, my hearing like a widening wound. First your voice, and then the rustling ceasing, the last glow of rain dead in the ground. That my feet kept time with the sun's imaginary changing position, hoping it would rise suddenly from scattered parts of my body into the upturned asps of my eyes. No clearing in the quiet, no change at all. In my throat, the little mercury line that regulates my speech began to fall rapidly the endless length of my spine. And so what I saw in that was a longing. And I think that Advent, although it is full of joy and expectation, there's also a longing for newness, for change, for the Christ child to come. And so, yeah, I think that speaks to the dead that we can often feel in the winter, the mundane constant of our footfalls, but at the same time, the tingle that runs down our spine as we expect something new. So I'm going to pass it to Will.
Yeah. We're gonna sing "O Come, O Come, Emmanuel" again this morning. It's not many Christmas songs that I really know or feel like. I don't know. I just like the depth in this one. I feel like a lot of times, a lot of Christmas songs that we know don't have a lot of depth to them. Feel free to sing any of the words that you know or the chorus, but take this just. Oh come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel that mourns in lonely exile here, until the Son of God appears. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. Oh, come now, day spring, come and cheer our spirits by thine advent here. Disperse the gloomy clouds of night, and death's dark shadows put to flight. Oh, come, desire of nations bind, in one the hearts of all mankind. Bid thou our sad divisions cease, and be thyself our King of peace. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. God, help us to just take a minute to reflect on the ways that you have been with us this week, and the moments where things have slowed down for us to notice that there are beautiful things going on in life, even in the mundane. Help us to share those things and encourage one another in this space. In your name we pray. Amen.
So we're going to do Name the Good. So I'm going to start us off for this week. My time that I saw Christ or God in the week. Let's see. I'm trying to think. Does anybody have one? Well, I'm thinking. I thought I'd have one, but I don't. Any wind in your sails? Any any life you saw breaking in? Any light?
Sydney came over on whatever day that was, and we watched Harry Potter with my roommates, and it was just so much fun because like Sydney had never seen it before, and I hadn't watched it in a long time, and it was just really nostalgic and sweet to get to spend that time together and get to know each other better.
Classic.
Yeah, are you one of us now?
I'm trying to get into it. I want to watch them all. I never read them or watched them, so I just like people have talked about it around me and stuff. So I said there's some plot points. So I want to.
If you're into it and you don't want to commit to actually physically reading, the audiobooks are unbelievable.
Really?
The narrator is phenomenal,
They have
and
all the voices.
all the voices, and he's British. It is the ideal way to experience Harry Potter. I highly recommend.
Mm.
Listen to the audio.
I listen to it.
What was really amazing to me was Sydney said she didn't have like any spoilers. Like she doesn't know the plot at all. So,
Ooh,
like, you know.
that is rare.
Because pieces, like, because people have watched around me, so I know like some bits and pieces that I've seen. But yeah, no, I don't know the entire plot or like how it all plays out. So
I wasn't allowed to watch it growing up.
me neither.
It was witchcraft. Yeah. Hmm.
We'll do a best plug around there.
All the folks who weren't allowed to read.
Twilight Days.
I feel like mine are always about Rosie, but Leah mentioned it on the way here. Is like I work stupidly early in the morning most days, and so Sundays I get whenever Rosie Russell's awake, I'll take her and just hang out with her for an hour or two until Leah wakes up and gets ready, and I can like notice that I'm just like happier when I do that. Like I have more life and more energy when I get to start my day with Rosie. So big pals.
Mm.
And he's the best because he lets me sleep on Sundays.
Mhm.
So I can just sleep and he gets to,
We had our annual tradition of Christmas movie party at our house last night. And so this is something that started out of necessity in Portland because we were a bunch of transplants. And so none of us had family there. And so Christmas shopping, when you don't have like grandparents to dump your kids off of, becomes really impossible. So I would go with kids with you. Corinne and I tried that one year. It did not work out very well. And so we started it to like, hey, we will watch everyone's kids and give everyone a night if you will at some point take our kids. It was kind of a brag. But Molly was 2 and 4. So we've done this forever. But then it just became like their favorite tradition. And so we continue it. It's very different now having 10, 7, and 9-year-olds running around the house. But we did that last night, and it was just sweet because it's simple. Like, this is not a fancy party. Like, it's Little Caesar's Pizza. I taught them how to make cootie catchers last night. They thought that was like the best thing in the whole world. I made them Christmas theme. I was like, here guys, like, are you on the nice list or naughty list? But they thought that was amazing. And then we watched Elf, and I made spaghetti cookies, and it was so fun. But the whole time, like, Molly Kate came up to me like 6 times and was like, Mom, this is just the best thing ever. Thank you for doing this for us. Like, she was just like, I'm having so much fun. My friends are having so much fun. And it was just like really sweet to be like, you know, this is it's a lot of work, and it's really crazy because we have a small house, but like she's getting to like invite her friends in, and just, you know, we sharing our space, and I don't know, it's just really sweet, and it's one of my favorite things. And one day they're going to be too old for it and not want to do it. We have Charlie for that, I guess. But yeah, it just made me happy to just feel like that they're loving it and wanting to like share moments, like create moments for their friends. Like I've wanted to do that. They're starting to like see the value in that, creating moments for people. So it's really fun. In Elf, he makes the spaghetti with the chocolate. So I made like haystacks, but I did it with like chocolate syrup and M&Ms and sprinkles, and so they look. And I made them in like bowls. So it looks like it's not actual spaghetti.
well, I didn't think it was, but I was like, this
Elf themed cookies.
it sounded really
I just figured your mind was going to go exactly what I was talking about.
pretty sure. Go ahead.
They were super good. Yeah. No, it's like I always eat spaghetti cookies.
I love it.
Those hardened noodles.
I thought of mine. Friday, Blake and I grabbed lunch, and it was really good. I just felt like it was a moment that I could be vulnerable and was seen, and I just love that part of our community. So that's my. Anything else? Anybody else? Cool. Swap it out.
Thanks, man. All right, y'all. You ready? Part 2, Christmas. Got a Bible, and you want to follow along, go to Matthew chapter 2. We'll jump in just a second. Today, you know how I feel about titles. Saying the incarnation and how you see yourself when you look in the mirror. So there you go. If you don't know, there's a figure named Krampus. Anybody with me? Krampus is a figure in folklore.
Good movies.
Yeah, terrifying movies. During the Christmas season, he scares children who have misbehaved. He's hairy, has cloven hooves and horns of a goat. He has a long pointed tongue that lolls out, and he has some fangs. If you want to be terrified, just Google it. It's actually horrifying. He assists Santa. Okay, so this is like a long time ago, early 16th century. Okay, he assists Santa. The pair visit children on the night of December 5th, which is what? Tomorrow? Yep, that's coming tomorrow. On the night of December 5th, St. Nick rewards the well-behaved children with modest gifts, such as oranges, dried fruit, walnuts, and chocolate, which are great gifts. And while the badly behaved children receive punishment from Krampus with birch rods. So like you're getting it. A lot of people say that's the origins of you getting coal in your stocking, because it's a little too terrifying to say that this goat creature is going to come and beat you to death. Like,
I will say, my cousins live in Austria. Krampus is 100% still a thing there. My young cousin
Good.
has grown up with Krampus. So.
That's
Are they
scary.
terrified of him, or is it like a normal thing?
I guess it's just normal. Like, it's just part of the tradition. Yeah.
That's very terrifying. Me and Tuck were talking about the Dwight one from Belschnickel. So it's very much like Belschnickel. So, we all know that doesn't necessarily make sense. Okay. Not because of like the supernatural aspect of it, of this goat coming to beat you, but because we can't split humans up that neatly. I think that's where we get the rub. Is like we can't split humans into strict categories of good and bad. Because, just be honest about yourself. You're a mix of light and dark. You're a mix of being nervous and confident in your life. You're a mix of you've made some awesome decisions and also some poor decisions. And even intermixed in those decisions, you had some good motives and some bad motives. Like, how can you even like separate those? You have an identity. You have a personhood, but also you wear many different masks like in your life. So it's like, how can we easily and evenly split each other up and ourselves up? Some of us grew up, and maybe you still live in a world where you're not actually your true self all the time. Like a lot of it, when you study psychology as child development, they talk a lot about kids growing up in an environment where they weren't allowed to be themselves. They weren't allowed to express their feelings, or if they were to have feelings, you're supposed to do it elsewhere and like in your room, and like so no one else sees. Or even like as extreme as like you wanted to be interested in something and your parents wanted you to be interested in something else, and like there's a forcing there. Perhaps those around you are too preoccupied with themselves to notice you. There's like a lot that we could talk about there. Perhaps you've never been set free to actually be yourself. Perhaps you've lived various versions of yourself your whole life. I think even Christmas is an opportunity for us to have to put on a face. You have to put a best foot forward. You have to shield others from what you actually think, who you actually are. Make sure that conversation doesn't come up at the dinner table. Maybe this is a season where you shield yourself from your past hurt. Like I know a lot of times with Christmas, it carries baggage, it carries hurt, it carries painful family trauma and memories like that. You have to shield yourself from your losses, from your depression, how you're not holly jolly all the time. You're not singing joy to the world and you're blowing up bushels of fun and it's a bright time and a right time, because you're not feeling that. So like, what if that's not your experience? What if you have to put on a face? And what if church is a place you have to put on a face? I think we all kind of come from seasons or church experiences or even just like religious culture where that's what that means, is like you put on a face, you put a best foot forward. What carries you through? What's going to carry you through? Is there something that's bigger, that's the common denominator of who you are, that's bigger, deeper, fuller, more secure, more satisfying as a foundation? Like, is it possible? And perhaps like learning who you are and your true self, like the core of your identity, maybe that's scary, like for you just to think about for a second. Because maybe you think you may be let down with the result. You don't want to know what you're actually going to find deep down. So think about this. How many ads have you seen come up on your Instagram or whatever about becoming a XYZ, a stock market guru in 5 days? You know what I'm talking about? Here's how to lose weight in 30 days. Learn how to become a welder in this master class, and you'll end up making 6 figures in 3 months. Even our Christian world has our own versions of these, as in, you should be more than you are now to be pleasing to God. Your weaknesses are in the way of God's plan. Your lack of religious fervor is actually disqualifying you from divine participation in your life. You're not doing it right. You don't know enough. Other spiritual people have something that you don't have. The list is endless. Like, you walk into a religious space, you kind of have to put on something. We know that. So the question for today is it possible to live into your true self? Does the incarnation have anything to say to us about who you are and when you look at yourself in the mirror? I think it does. And I hope at the end of this, we can walk away a little bit more secure in who we are. So you got a Bible, Matthew chapter 2. I think that's what I told you. Chapter 2. We're starting verse 1. After Jesus had been born at Bethlehem in Judea, during the reign of King Herod, some wise men came to Jerusalem from the east. "Where is the infant king of the Jews?" they asked. "We saw his star as it rose and have come to do him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was perturbed. So my translation says, and I like that word. He was perturbed. So was the whole of Jerusalem. He called together all the chief priests and the scribes of the people and inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. "At Bethlehem in Judea," they told him, "for this is what the prophet wrote. And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judea, you are by no means least among the leaders of Judah, for out of you will come a leader who will shepherd my people." Herod summoned the wise men to see him privately. He asked them the exact date on which the star had appeared and sent them on to Bethlehem. "Go and find out all about the child," he said. "When you have found him, let me know, so that I too may go and do him homage." After having listened to what the king had said, they set out. And there in front of them was the star that had been rising. It went forward, halted over the place where the child was. The sight of the star filled them with delight. Going into the house, they saw the child, Mother Mary. Falling to their knees, they paid him homage. Opening the treasures, they offered him gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. But they were warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, return to their own country a different way. Christmas story. Skip over to chapter 2 of Luke. We read some of this last week, but we're trying to touch base again. Luke chapter 2, look at verse 1. "Now this time, Caesar Augustus issued a decree for a census for the whole world to be taken. The census, the first, took place while Quirinius was governor of Syria, and everyone went to his own town to be registered. So Joseph set out from the town of Nazareth in Galilee and traveled up to Judea, to the town of David called Bethlehem, since he was of David's house and line." Very important who this Jesus person is. Connected to David's line. There's a lot going on there. In order to be registered together with Mary, his betrothed, who was with child. While they were there, the time came for her to have a child, and she gave birth to a son, her firstborn. She wrapped him in swaddling clothes and laid him in a manger because there's no room for them at the inn. One more. Go to John chapter 1. Hey, last week I made the note that there's only 2 versions of the Christmas story, and they're very, very different, Matthew's and Luke's. If you want to go read them and just make notes. They're very, very different. Matthew and Luke are the only ones that mention the birth stories. Mark and John don't. Paul doesn't. Jesus doesn't. And the ones that we do have are very, very different. And it's worth getting into. And I just want to make the note that, like, if you're noticing that, welcome. Like, you're welcome at the table. And so we're going to read a version in 1 John, not about the birth story, but you're with it. So chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things came to be. Not one thing had its being but through him. All that came to be had life in him, and that life was the light of men, a light that shines in the dark, a light that darkness could not overpower. Look at verse 9 there. The Word was the true light that enlightens all men. All right, are you with me? One of the points last week we talked about was when it comes to Christmas, I don't think we've truly dealt with the incarnation. I don't think we've actually danced around it enough. Too often we make it cheesy and we skip over it and we don't actually ponder it. I think it has so much to say to us in our day and age. So the incarnation, I'm going to make a couple notes about the incarnation real quick. The incarnation is kind of Christianity's story. It's been the story from the very beginning. When I say incarnation, we usually think of Jesus, okay? Think of Christmas. But I want to blow it up a little bit. Incarnation simply means that the spiritual nature of reality and the material nature of reality are actually one. That's what incarnation means. Spirit, material, one. That's what that means. You guys know the Shema in Deuteronomy 6 where they say the Lord is one. A lot of rabbis talk about what they mean is reality is one, seamless nature. Everything is connected. There is no separation. They're not saying like there's only one God. What they're saying is that everything is actually one, is connected. They've always been one. So the incarnation is not just what happened when Jesus was born. This thing has actually always been the story the whole time, like since the beginning. We talked about this with Zimzum. Remember, God made space for others to flourish. That space is actually enveloping with himself. Like that's kind of the story, but he had to condense it down to where we could flourish. Think about whenever God made humans, we're made in the image of God, like we're the physical representations of God. Think about when God was in Moses and with Moses and others like that in the Old Testament. Think about the tabernacle, when God was inside the tabernacle with his people. Think about with the temple, God was in the temple with his people. We have the story of Jesus. We have the God in spirit who's alive in you and me. And we have the church. Like, there's not a coincidence why Paul said it's not a coincidence why Paul calls us Christ's body. An incarnation of Christ in the world right now is you and me. So like incarnation has been the story the whole time. Okay. The result should be both joy and a resounding sense of like beauty at this whole thing that we've been a part of the whole time. Like God has actually never been separate from us. Never wanted to be separate from us, never was separate from us. Has always been enveloping our world. So what happened, however we explain the person of Jesus and what's happening there, is actually telling us something a whole lot bigger, that it's always been like matter in our life has always been the hiding place for God. Always. Christ did not enter the world as an alien coming into our space, but Christ was born out of a world that God was already soaked in. A big difference there. So that's what Christ is. It's a revelation of what God is up to in the world, everywhere and all the time. So when we look at the Christmas story, a vulnerable baby in a feeding trough, like we need to see the beautiful mystery of this specific concrete moment, and that helps us see this bigger picture that's going on everywhere. The light that's coming into the world is illuminating everybody, okay? Without the incarnation, any of them, God, it basically means that God is separate from us. He's distant from creation. He's absent from us. The incarnation's message is that God has been with us the whole time, okay? In other words, incarnation is about being seen. To be seen is to allow yourself to be known. To be known is to risk being loved and not loved. One of the invitations of Advent is to think about how divinity is being seen in the person of Jesus. What does it mean for the unseen holy mystery of God to become seen? So think about the story of Jesus. What we see in the story of Jesus is that being seen by others, who he is, what he's here to do, was complicated for him too. The incarnation was not void of hardship and heartbreak. Jesus was misunderstood by many in his community. His own family was skeptical, thought he was crazy. The religious leaders of his day thought he was the spawn of Satan. He had a friend sell him out to those who were trying to kill him. Think about that for a second. A friend sell him out. If the incarnation was fueled by the belief that like love and identity and purpose in the world is something that you earn, that you keep together, then of course that would be devastating to a person of Jesus. But think about the life of Jesus. It was everything but that. Like Jesus had a deep grounding that was bigger than the losses. It was bigger than the hardships. It was bigger than the other identifications that he could have had. Like there was something that was deeper and grounding, that was a never-ending spring of love for Jesus that enabled him to love the haters, like love the people who were going against him, that lied about him, that wanted to kill him, to stay true through those lies. It was a source that emboldened him to meet others in their pain. It was a source that ignited him to speak hope in a culture that was desperate for a new way to organize themselves. It was a source that empowered him to lay down his life for others. Like there's something organizing Jesus in the midst of being seen and being loved and rejected and hurt and not heard and not seen. Like the ground of existence, God took the same risk that you and I take every single day to be seen and to be known, to exist in reality as we are. That's what the risk of the incarnation is the risk of love. And love risks heartbreak. It risks rejection. It risks being sold out by your friends. But love is the animating source that brings about all the wonderful things, like companionship, like joy, like healing, like wholeness, like being known in the world. Like you have to risk both. You have to risk being hurt, and you could be loved and accepted. So before you're the masks that you put on, before you're the persona that Carl Jung talked about, before you have the shadow, we're leaning in. The incarnation is that we're leaning into the idea that God made God's being connected with us. It's not because of your success. It's not because of your beliefs. It's not because of your status, your performance, but because you're human. Are you with me? This is the idea of the true self. Now, Thomas Merton, you guys know how much I love that guy. Thomas Merton gave us a lot of insights into this. He talked about the true self is that which is deeper than anything else for you. It's that self that's caught up in God. Whenever God looks at you, this is the self that God sees, the true self in you. It's the true self that God has created you to be. It's the you in there that's been there the whole time, united with God. And it may be covered and forgotten and lost, but it's there. Remember, the light that's been there the whole time, it's illuminating everyone. Thomas Merton says this. He says, a tree gives glory to God by being a tree. In being what God means it to be, it is obeying him. It consents, so to speak, to his creative love. It's expressing an idea which is not distinct from the essence of God, and therefore a tree imitates God by being a tree. The more a tree is like itself, the more it is like God. If it tried to be like something else which it was not intended to be, it'd be less like God, and therefore would not give God glory. So each particular human, in the individuality, with characteristics, qualities, identity, purpose, values, gifts, mission, honor God, give glory to God by being precisely what God intended them to be. Martin goes on, he says, for me to be a saint means to be myself. Therefore, the problem of sanctity and salvation is in fact a problem of finding out who I am and discovering my true self. So it's not saying you don't need to work on yourself, like you're great and perfect as you are. It is saying that there is something deep within you that's bigger, that's broader, that's deeper, that's more secure than everything else. Like I know it's vague, but I'm getting somewhere. Like there's an immortal diamond in you that God sees when God looks at you. So you do need to work on yourself, trust me, because there's also the reality of the false self. What the false self is an illusion. It's a person that you want yourself to be, but who cannot actually exist. Because God does not know that person. Like if God really is the ground of existence, the ground of our being, and you're trying to be someone else that you're not, God does not see that person. That person does not exist. We try to clothe ourselves and construct other images, to cover over, become something objectively real. And this is kind of our world of what we live in. Merton says this. He says, I wind experiences around myself and cover myself with pleasures and glory like bandages in order to make myself perceptible to the world. There's no substance under those things with which I am clothed. I'm hollow, and the structures of pleasures and ambitions have no foundation. We often think that we're nothing but the sum total of your relationships, of your career, your losses, your money, your family history, your trauma, your knowledge, your sin, your insecurities, your performances, your earnings, your disappointments. When we cling to those things, we cling to those false realities. We make that the center for which we pull from. We're making our identity into a false self. That's not who you are. Your false self is often the obstacle to realizing your true self. If you're putting forward, I am this, I am my performance, that's going to be an obstacle to seeing who you actually are. The false self is a shadow. It's nothing. And one of the things that makes humans unique is actually our ability, our capacity, our tendency to reject our true selves, to reject who you actually are. That's something that makes humans unique, is our tendency to reject who we actually are, to hide our identity, to shield it, to cover it with other things, put on a mask to pretend to be something that you're not. So just take a second and think about that. Think about the masks that you put on. That's what the persona is. I'm putting on the face to be here. Why are you putting on those faces? Is it with these certain people? It's like ponder, like we're all putting on a face. Often we get too comfortable with those masks and it just becomes glued to us and how we are and who we are. We get trapped on that level and we hold on to those things for dear life because that's the only thing we know to hold on to. That's the only life that we think that we have. That's why we scramble for people to notice us. That's why we try to earn statuses. That's why we got to scrape by to get that promotion, to fish for compliments, and to be too hurt by people's criticisms of us is because we're looking for a foundation. We're looking for something to hold on to that's deeper, that's secure. And why is it so hard? It is so hard. I think it goes back to that beginning. It's because when you decide to live into your true self, you're revealing it to the world. And you now can be touched. You can be seen. You can be loved. You can be embraced. And you can also be rejected, ignored, not heard, misunderstood. You with me? So what do we do? My conclusion here. Meister Eckhart says this. For God to be is to give being. For man to be is to receive being. Okay? So who you are, we're always receiving from God. Like your true self is not something that you're putting on and you're scraping and you're earning or whatever. It's actually something that you've received from God. At each moment, we exist to the extent that we receive existence from God. Our freedom from the prison of our masks comes in realizing that everything is a gift. Even how God sees me, it's a gift. Everything is God's givenness to you. I have three what do we do's real quick. Let me just hit those. What do you do with this? You're receiving that identity. In other words, let God love you. Like the real you. Like this is what Brennan Manning says. He says, define yourself radically as one beloved by God. God's love for you constitutes your worth. Accept that and let it be. Was not everyone you how important you are to the place. You Here's some questions to discover true self, identify some of the false self. What are you good at? Extra minutes. Here's another way of framing that one is what makes you tired? Now again, there's some things that are good tired. We can talk about that another time, but just what spins you? Maybe too much. This is what I was talking about earlier is what are you holding on to for dear life? Put that up. At work, I feel like I have to put this face forward.
no more, and it's setting me free. I don't wanna hide no more. There's a power in me, and I don't wanna hide no more. I can spend my life pretending that I'm better off alone, but I'm never really living if I'm never fully known. And it might take me forever before I'm finally old, but I don't wanna hide no more. There's a power in me, and I don't wanna hide no more. And it's setting me free. I don't wanna hide no more. There's a power in me, and I don't wanna hide no more. Yeah, I don't wanna hide no more. I don't wanna hide no more. 'Cause there's a power in me, and I don't wanna hide no more. And it's setting me free, and I don't wanna hide no more. I don't wanna hide no more.
Again, thanks, man. All right, y'all. Couple of things, and then we're done. First, didn't ask him about this, but Jeremy and Laura, could you guys share more, or just again, about what you guys are doing right now and where you guys are, and if there's additional ways that we can help you guys?
Laura knows way more about it than I do.
Okay.
So,
Several months ago, Jeremy had a work trip in Germany, and I had an exchange student that was in Germany. So while he worked, I hung out with my exchange student. And in her home, her parents, they had opened their home to some Ukrainian refugees. It was a mom and her little boy, and the little boy was Ellie's age. And I studied World War I literature, all this stuff, and you can see the pictures right up the 1,000-yard stairs, what they would call it. That 7-year-old had that. He would not play, he would not engage, he just sat and just stared. And the mom kind of opened up a little bit. She spoke a little English, and she was just seeing a lot. The dad wasn't allowed to come with them. He had to stay and fight. And it broke me. It broke my heart to see Ellie, it was Ellie. And it just broke my heart, and I was telling Jeremy, he came over later and hung out with her for a little while and left, and I was like, we have to do something. If we ever got the opportunity to help, and we just prayed about it and we talked about it, and we were like, this kind of feels like a long shot, but Lord, here's our heart, here it is. And then we found out a few months later at Celebration, there was a connection at Celebration Church that they were trying to bring some families to the States, and they needed host families. They were like, the church will help sponsor them, take care of them, pay for stuff, but we need a place to send them. And so Jeremy and I did, we put our names in, we were like, here we are. I don't know what it means, but we know this is important to us, and so here we are. Never heard a word about it, just that was it. And then a few weeks ago, I was driving down the road and thought about it again, and I was like, Lord, I know you don't forget me, but remember when I said that? I'm still here if you want. And I'm not kidding, 2 days later, we got an email, and they were like, this is a family. Are you guys still willing to help? And we were like, yeah, of course. So, which was kind of funny because you just finished moving basement like you wanted to, and we were like, time to tear it all down.
Sanctuary.
Yeah. So we were like, okay, yeah, this is fine. You know, they said normally it takes about 6 weeks. You know, a crew that probably won't be here for, maybe a year. And that's when I posted, like, hey, we've got this family coming. That night, they emailed and they were like, hey, they'll be here in a week. And we were like, all right, Lord. So that was fun. But yeah, they'll be here in a week. I do not know how to pronounce her name. It's in Ukraine. I don't know. It starts with a K. And then his name is Falcon, and their son is named Sam. He's a year-old. Falcon is a musician. That's really all I know about the career thing. That's really all they've given us. They said that when they get here, they have nothing, like nothing. They said they'll arrive with a backpack, basically.
They're from Kharkiv, which is the city real close to, it's not far from the Russian border. It was one of the first cities to be hit hard when it was just leveled. And they've been in Poland for a little bit. They got out of Ukraine, I guess, because they had nothing to go to. So
They said they've been living in a one-room apartment in Poland, and that they brought, like, they literally threw what they had in a bag and got out. So they will be living with us. They said anywhere for 2 to 4 months. They're not allowed to work. They're not allowed to receive money because that could jeopardize their visas, basically. Yeah. So the church will be taking care of, like, buying groceries and stuff, but, like, they're not allowed to, like, receive money. They're not allowed to work and kind of under the table, money, anything like that. So until they get approved for, like, long-term whatever, they say that can take about 4 months. They'll be staying with us. So thank you guys already for the support that you've given us. I mean, it's crazy. Like, pretty much everything we needed was in like 48 hours.
That's good.
Now we're kind of thinking about Christmas. Like, what does that look like for them? Because they have family here. His brother is already here. So we're kind of like, about Christmas presents. Like, do we bring them to our Appalachian country Christmas? Like, Tender Tennessee Christmas over here? I don't know. So all that we're still trying to figure out a little bit.
we don't even know if they speak English. So
We've been learning Ukrainian real fast
Nice.
for the past 2 weeks.
Nice.
I know what you said about before was like household items, but will they need like clothes and the baby will need clothes?
we'll probably know more when they get
I mean,
here.
yeah, I guess you don't know their size, like
Right.
how what size people these are. So.
We've the basement, which some of y'all have been there. It's basically like an apartment. I mean, we're turning it into everything they need, and they'll be able to go in and out.
Yeah.
And they won't have to come up.
Yeah,
They
we
don't
wanted
need
them
to.
to feel like it was their space. Like,
Yeah.
you can come in, go out whenever you want. They can't drive. So that's another thing we're trying to figure out is like, do we take him? Because his brother. I don't know. There's a lot of I don't know.
Sure. Yeah.
So whenever I said, like, it's great for us, like,
Yeah, for sure. Well, if there's anything specific as it comes up too, like, be cool for us to pitch in and.
That's me. I brought it.
okay, you got it?
Nice.
That's awesome.
You need baby toys? 'Cause I have a whole basket already set out that I was going to donate to Carla. So I'll just bring you the basket.
That's great.
Cool. It's good. Yeah, well, keep us updated, and we'll stay in tune
Do you
too.
have a packing plate or you got a grip?
We got a crib. But not a pack.
We have an actually. I was like, we have a packing plate too. We pulled it out for the first time. Let's see.
It's just going to be an experience. We're just So it's uncomfortable
Sure.
and it's scary, but we had no reason to say no. So we're just going to roll with it.
Well, cheers. We're with you in it. All right. That's cool. Yeah, we'll stay in touch with all that, and we can all keep that in mind. So that's helpful. Thursday we're back in with our place, and then with Will and Lexi. We have food planned.
We haven't talked about it. Lexi knows.
Okay. Yeah, we'll figure that out. That's Thursday. I thought about doing a Christmas party. That'd be fun. We'll all get dressed up or something. I don't know.
Ugly Christmas sweaters.
I don't know.
Ugly Christmas sweaters.
Like a fall, like a Christmas ball.
A Christmas ball, a dance. Sadie Hawkins.
It's a Yule ball. Yeah, spoilers. We'll do something. So I just wanted to get that out there. So if you guys have any ideas, there you go. Christmas party happening, I guess, in a couple weeks. I guess we'll do it on a. I wonder if we could probably just do it the last Thursday before Christmas. What is that? 22nd? That too close to Christmas for a Christmas party? 15th. We'll figure something out.
Yes.
We'll just let you guys know we're having a Christmas party, and we hope you guys come. So, and we're gonna do something. What's the office one? Yankee swap. Yankee swap. Someone get an iPod.
Someone gets an
What?
We could all go to Benihana.
We could.
And then come back and
We could. I'm not scared. All right. Is there anything else that you conclude with? All right. Cheers. Merry Christmas.
Somebody did live loud.
Oh yeah.
Change your name.